So the first time I met you was somewhere in Newcastle. We went out for breakfast, but I first saw you on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I saw you talking about everything you do in the hunting realm and life in general. And
some of it, yeah.
Some of it. You went into detail. I think you were talking about the bear incident.
Which one?
Well, the one where you gun jammed.
Oh yeah, the baddest one.
The baddest one, the worstest one. And I saw that and I was like, holy shit, this guy's Australian and crazy. You very rarely see Australians on Rogan's podcast. And then you mentioned you live in Merriweather. I was like, holy shit, that's like 5 minutes from my house. And I reached out through your lovely wife, Kim, and we caught up and you came to my very first comedy show.
Oh, I did, yeah.
In Sydney, the first show of the tour, first hour that I've ever done on stage. And I think you were pretty impressed, so that was nice.
You see me clapping and laughing.
Yeah, just having a great time up the back. And you do some pretty hectic shit. And not intentionally either. Like you go out and you do your treks and your hunting trips and all that type of stuff. It always seems to go back to something just mental happens. Do you talk about the bear thing with the gun and all that type of stuff? Have you talked about that too much, do you think? Because I think a lot of people would like to hear about it.
I don't know. I don't know if I've talked. I usually do something and then I just move on, you know. So it's because you end up making, that's the normal then, you know.
Yeah.
Like getting charged by a bear becomes the normal, and that's why I'm like, which one?
Right.
Because I've done enough of those expeditions now that just ends up becoming a good, you know, a good part of the trip. It's sort of becomes the regular. It sort of becomes the norm. So for me, I talk about it and then just sort of move on. But if you want to talk about it, I'll talk about it.
I mean, I don't know. Do you want to talk about it?
I'd
like to talk about it. I'd like to talk about the bear.
Shit. What I talk about?
What are these bears like? I've never seen a bear.
Well, they've got different attitudes.
Yeah.
So put it that way. There's a place that I hunt in Montana regularly, and that's where they catch all the problem grizzlies and they remove them from, say one moves into a town of Livingston or something like that, or Bozeman, and it becomes a problem bear. They'll capture that bear there and they'll actually release it in one of my favorite hunting spots. So it becomes, that's the real, they're very regular there and they're used to humans. But in saying that, I've never had any issues with bears there. They're all male. I've never seen a female there, because your problem bears are usually a female of cubs. Instinctively, she just wants to protect the cubs. And if you're a threat, then yeah, she's going to try and go you. But
can you tell it's a female straight away, or is it the behaviour?
You can't. And females are fine, but if they've got cubs, if you see a female with cubs, it's like, no, you stay sort of clear.
Yeah.
So anyway, that place has got tons of bears. Every time I go there, I have bears come towards camp or in the camp. I have bears try and steal my kills, so I'll go and shoot an elk. You'll go, you know, elk's such a big animal, it takes a few days to carry and collect all the meat and recover it all. So a bear will end up getting on your kill generally in that time. I've still had no issues there. I've yelled at grizzlies, big grizzlies that have been on a kill, and they've ran the other way. And I've had interactions with bears in British Columbia as well, and that's sort of been the same deal. But this particular time I walked through the back of Idaho into Montana. I was trying to get into a spot that I thought wouldn't have a lot of hunters. And that seemed like a pretty good way to do it, is yes, walk through another state, into the back of another state that you couldn't access from Montana or anywhere else. So I did that, and on the walk in, I actually seen a sign that Parks and Wildlife had put up, or Forestry had put up probably, and it said, attention, bear in area with cubs, very aggressive. And I was still another half a day's walk from that sign, like way back, so I was not really thinking about it. I was actually going to a place that had a lot less bears than what I was used to. It was like day 3 or day 4. The end of the day, and I was trying to get back to my camp. I just had a little spy camp on top of the mountain there, and this is all through the Rocky Mountains, so it's all like beautiful, picturesque country. And I was sort of coming up on a slope, and as the slope sort of flattened out, I could tell that I had seen her at the same time she'd seen me. We sort of just both met eyes as I was coming over the ridge, and I sort of just seen this bear's head there like that, and you couldn't tell if it was a male or female, but I was at the point, because I'm like 80, 100 yards away, that I'm like, shit, stop. Like,
how big are we talking?
Grizzly, like a full-grown grizzly. It's got a head on it like that. It's got a big pumpkin head on it, you know. And anyway, I sort of just went one more step because she put her head down, and then I lost sight of her because her head went down. So I had to take like 1 or 2 more steps to sort of get a look over the rise. And I took those couple of steps and looked, and there was a cub at her feet, and straight away I knew, shit, this isn't a good situation to be in. And I had a sidearm on me, but I didn't pull it at the time. And obviously I just hunt with a bow and arrow. That's just for protection. And yeah, then she sort of turned and she looked back at me, and then, you know, she's like this big on the rise, you know, and then she just went, and she just stood up on her back legs, and she was fucking giant, you know, she was big. And then by the time, because I seen her drop, and she dropped with speed, like to come straight at me. She went from the stand position straight like that to speed. By the time I grabbed the sidearm off me and pulled it out, she was turning off like at 20 yards away. That's how fast they move.
Fuck.
And I'd been practicing. My buddy Ed, he's a sheriff over there. He's the one that lent me the sidearm. And we'd been practicing and everything. So I'd been practicing drawing and shooting it accurately in a bad position, you know, in a bad situation. And you know, not to big note myself, but I was quick at getting it out. It wasn't like I was slow at getting it out. I just pulled it straight out, and by the time I got it there, she was already turning off 20 yards in front of me. She did a big huff. She turned off, she ran back around, and there was sort of a bit of brush in that there that you couldn't see through. And then she popped out the other side of the brush, and she was back at the cub. And I seen the cub, or it might have been another cub. I don't know if there was two or just one cub, but I sort of seen a cub disappear, and then I seen a cub back at the tree, and the cub hadn't climbed the tree. Generally, when the female does that, that's like a warning sign to the cubs will shoot up a tree for safety. And the cub was at the bottom of the tree, and she got and sniffed the cub, and then she just come straight at me again. And that's when I was yelling at her, and everyone thought that was hilarious, but it was just instinctively what was coming out of me. You know, I was like,
well, what else do you do?
Yeah, exactly. But
you can't run, because these things are, as you said, extremely quick.
Yeah, you turn your back on them, you're just in as much trouble, but you're blinded then, you know?
Yeah.
And I was yelling at her like, fucking ease up, you fucking mole, ease up, like that. And then I thought
what
she
else
was
do
on
you
me.
yell?
No, that's right. Yeah.
Hey, bear.
And I thought she was on me, and she just swiped the ground like 10 yards from me that time, and just turned back to the cub. And then, you know, obviously there's heaps of adrenaline going at this point. And I was sort of looking at the gun, because I think a part of me was like, why didn't the gun go off? You know, and then I was like, no, I mustn't have pulled the trigger. Like I felt like I had weight on the trigger. Like, you know, you just squeeze, you don't like shock it off, you just like squeeze. I felt like I had weight on the trigger, and it was like Ed's competition gun, so it's got a really light trigger. And she was back there at the cub for a second, and then that's when I start videoing, because grizzlies are highly protected in most of the US. And there's been cases where people have claimed out of self-defense they've had to shoot a grizzly, and those people have ended up in jail, because they sort of want to see a slash on you.
Yeah.
You know? And also I'm a foreigner in the country, so I pulled the phone out, I wanted good proof of it, and like she's there, and I'm sort of just quietly, because I didn't want to make any big reactions, you know, I didn't want to make any real loud noises beyond me yelling at her when she was coming at me, just instinctively I'd done that. And so I'm just quietly like talking to the phone, and I've got the pistol up like that, and you sort of see me turning it, because I was like, fucking something don't look right. But mate, I was that full of adrenaline. And then she was at the cub for a second, and then she walked around to the side slowly, and this side here was all brush, you couldn't see nothing. And then I'm just like where the fuck's she coming out? Like, I'm not going to see her until she's on me. And I'm like, if she comes a third time, she's coming for me. Like, she charged me 20 yards the first time, 10 the second, the next time she's fucking on me, you know. And just to put these bears into perspective, where they live, where black bears are, like black bears are on all four, they're that big. A black bear stands up, it's up there. Like a black bear would maul me and you in 2 seconds flat. These grizzlies, I've talked to these guides where these grizzlies interact with black bears, and they said the first swipe from a grizzly, that black bear is disabled. One swipe. So you're a person, like we're thin-skinned, you know, we're fucked. And so then I couldn't tell where she was coming out, so then I started walking back real slow. And then she popped back up at the cub, and as she was popping up at the cub again and standing up, I'm walking back, so I'm losing sight of her again, because I'm walking straight back down the hill like this. And then I sort of get down the hill, and I walk out, and I get on the next ridge, and like she's between where I've got to get to my camp, you know. And then anyway, I get to that other ridge, it starts getting dark, then I'm fucking walking in the dark. I've got no idea where she is, if she's trailing me, because they do that a lot. And then I'm sort of walking, and I'm like, fuck, I'm surprised the gun didn't go off. I definitely put weight on the trigger. You know, I've still got the gun in my hand, and then I look, and the fucking shell's jammed. So when I first cocked it back to go, the shell had jammed, and this is a funny story because Rogan tells it sometimes like I had the wrong bullets.
Yeah.
But they were the correct bullets, but they had such a flat face on them. So we did all the practice with a cheap bullet, and the projectile was just like a normal rounded off front. So we did all the practice with that, and then just before I was going to go hunting, my mate Ed said, take these, they're for big game. You know, they're like it's a big hollow point.
Yep, okay.
And that hollow point's got a real flat face on the projectile, and it just jammed on the throat.
Oh, right.
And then that was it. It was jammed. So I ended up pulling it out. I could slide one in there manually, so I'd have one shot if she come at me. And anyway, I walked back to the tent. I had to walk around a big loop around where she was last, got to the tent. And then it snowed like a bitch that night too. It was like real bad weather. And I got up in the morning, packed up in the dark, packed all my shit up and hiked out like in snow up to there the whole way. And then I was like, the whole idea was I was going to hunt that spot, even though my other spot's like nearly a guaranteed you're going to get onto elk and hunt. There's so many grizzlies there, and every trip they come in the camp, like, you know, they'll be on like a 3-day cycle where they do a big walk around the mountains, how they hunt. And so like a grizzly will come and it'll come to like 100 yards of the tent. A couple of days later, he'll come past again. He'll come to 50 yards of the tent. And then one of the last trips with my buddy Grant Hughes, the grizzly come right into the tent and was like breathing on the back of the tent. So I was trying to avoid going to such a high grizzly population. I tried, Under Armour was going to come and film a hunt there. So I'm like, oh, at least I have people with me because I usually do these solo hunts. So we'll go there, and then they couldn't come and do that hunt. They couldn't film in that area. And then I talked Shane Dorian, you know Shane Dorian? Talked Shane Dorian into coming. He was going to come for a hunt at least. And then I'm like, at least I have someone with me again. I'm not hunting by myself. And then Shane had to pull out. He got busy. And then, so then I was like, fuck, I keep going everywhere and running in the grizzlies. I'm just going to go to where I know the grizzlies always fucking are. And anyway, so I ended up hiking out of there, went into the gun store, bought some shells that actually would cycle through that handgun, and then went to the spot where there's usually tons of grizzlies, and I didn't see a single grizzly. And the second day I killed a big bull elk and hiked it out.
What will these bullets, these shells actually stop a grizzly, or is it just like a deterrent?
There's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like, I always make a joke because there's half the population's like, that's in the hunting grizzly country is like, carry bear spray. The other half of the population's like, carry a Glock or a 10 mil or something bigger, you know. And I always make the joke, like, because people have sprayed them before and it's fucking pissed them off with pepper spray and they go ballistic. And there was can't remember his full name, but his name was Todd. I think he was a forestry worker. He had a grizzly sow, jump him. She had cubs. She come and went to go him, and I think she got a hold of him the first time. He sprayed the hell out of her, like he maced the fuck out of her, and she mauled him, and he was walking back like holding half of his fucking head onto his face pretty much, like she tore right down there and ripped him up. And then she trailed him and come back for more. She hit him a second time going down the trail.
Fuck.
So it's just like, which way is the wind going as well? Like, what's the conditions? Is it windy as hell and you're trying to spray a grizzly when it's coming at you and then you cop it?
What's the distance for this spray? Is this like a 5 metre sort of thing?
It's supposed to be like, it's close quarters sort of thing.
I mean, that's close.
Yeah.
Like
I'd just prefer, not a jam gun, but I'd just prefer a gun and
put it down
and go at it.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, what
It's
happened?
a full last resort.
Of course.
You know, that's why when she stood up and she come the first time, I wasn't just like trying to squeeze the trigger off. The only time I reckon I squeezed the trigger was the second time when she was like at 10 yards. And I remember having to do this with a gun all the way like that. She was like there. And she turned off right at that spot, give out a big huff and sort of smoked the ground with her paw.
Fucking hell.
And then, I used to get shaky when I'd think and talk about it afterwards.
Of course.
Because you also don't, I just got one then all the way down my spine. You don't realise how big one of those animals are. Even if you see one in the zoo, you've got no fucking idea how big that animal is until it's 10 yards and there's no cage between you and it and it's coming for you like that.
Yeah.
And I can still see, as she was racing at me like that, like they full on lunge like that. As she was lunging, I can still see her hair going like buffing. Every time she hit the ground, her hair would go boom, boom.
Like a big afro.
Oh, fuck, it was crazy, mate.
What does that do to your psyche when you go back into a hunt?
you're aware of it, you're cautious of it, and you're thinking of it. And I guess it depends what sort of person you are, but it's not a I'm not doing that again sort of thing. You know, it's
No,
like,
of course.
it's a whole, you know, fuck it, it's that gay saying. Can you say gay on this show?
It's the homosexual
They're
saying.
Just as a saying, I say that. But it's that whole gay saying of, you know, everyone's alive, but not everyone's living, you know,
Sure.
It's that sort of thing. So I just, like, I don't want to die, but at the same time, I want to do what I do.
Yeah. And that's the trade-off. You know,
Yeah.
if you're going to hunt elk, you have to be aware of, you're in grizzly
If
country.
you're going to
I guess.
hunt them in that country, yeah.
Sure.